Legislating standard working hours may not be the way to go. Beijing says the fight against the Occupy campaign is far from over. And Yingluck Shinawat's mounting woes.
Hello and a very good evening. The Standard Working Hours Committee has stressed the need for flexibility for different professions when it comes to regulating working hours. The committee has also been told that legislation is not the way to go. Liz Yoon has our top story tonight.
A group rallied today demanding legislation for standard working hours. This came as the Standard Working Hours Committee met to try to map out the way forward. The committee discussed 2 reports by consultants who had interviewed more than 10,000 workers, as well as various employees' associations and trade unions. The reports reviewed that the median hours of work stands at 44 a week. More than 720,000 employees' work was considered long hours. According to the Labour Department, that would mean 51.5 hours each week. The median working hours for those in the catering industry, for example, stands at 54. At present, 25% of employees work overtime, but an overwhelming 70% of them receive no compensation for that. But 70% of the interviewees said they do not prefer lower pay that comes with shorter working hours. 40% are willing to work overtime as long as they're compensated. But the reports are leaning against legislation, saying that could lower Hong Kong's competitiveness. After the meeting, the chairman of the Standard Working Hours Committee pointed out there's a need to regulate working hours. A new task force is set up to study possible limits on working hours for different occupations, with an emphasis on flexibility.
We are also very clear that every trade, every profession, every job is different, so we cannot use one for all issues.
The committee has never released any progress report since it started its work 2 years ago. Today, it still refused to specify when it would make public its report and first-round consultation results, only promising that a policy recommendation would be handed in by the end of its term in March next year. Some workers we talked to today feared that their pay will drop significantly because of a cap on working hours. Martin Leung, who works for a real estate agency, explained why he always has to work overtime.
Our business kind of a very, very flexible. According to every kind, different requests.
Labour Party legislator Lee Chuk-yen, for his part, accused the government of dragging its feet on the matter. Liz Yun, TVB News.
Vice President Li Yuanchao says the central government believes the fight against the Occupy movement is not over yet, with the good show yet to come. That's according to a report published by a state-approved news website that covers Hong Kong and Macau affairs. The report on HKM News quoted Vice President Li Yuanchao's comments at a meeting of the All China Federation of Returned Overseas Chinese in Beijing on Wednesday. Apart from being quoted as saying the anti-Occupy battle is not over and that the good show is yet to come, the Vice President reportedly said the central and SAR governments, as well as patriotic forces, have won for now. That's because the months-long Hong Kong farce, referring to last year's Occupy protests or the people instigating them, failed to achieve their goals. He reportedly called it a big step forward in protecting the one country, two systems principle, and that the behavior of the young protesters should be used as a lesson to keep everyone alert. Li is also said to have urged overseas Chinese to give stronger support to the fight against the Occupy movement. Here in Hong Kong, the Federation of Students called the report worrying. Council member Nathan Law expressed concern that there would be repercussions for those involved in the movement to serve as a warning and deterrent against fighting for democracy. And political commentator Johnny Lau said Li's comments showed Beijing believes that the impact of the Occupy movement is far-reaching. Lau said the umbrella movement has resulted in young people becoming interested and engaged in politics, with reports that some young people are being driven to join politics or even run in elections. And with Beijing believing that foreign forces are trying to influence Hong Kong youth, no wonder this spells trouble for the central government.
According to its fare adjustment mechanism, the MTR Corporation could raise fares by 4.35% this year. Rani Samtani has the story.
The MTR Corporation reported a profit of almost $8 billion in the first half of last year. The railway giant will work out its fare adjustment in June after the government announces the Transport Nominal Wage Index for the fourth quarter. The company uses the mechanism to calculate the fare adjustment rate. The overall rate takes into consideration factors such as inflation and wage changes in the transport sector. The Census and Statistics Department reported a 4.9% increase in inflation for December. The Transport Nominal Wage Index for the fourth quarter of 2014 will be announced in March. Based on these figures, there could be a fare increase of 4.35%. There have been increasing calls from lawmakers to review the fare adjustment mechanism. Since the system was implemented in 2010, the MTR Corporation has increased its fares annually, even when it reported huge profits. At present, there is a public affordability cap imposed on the mechanism to prevent a fare hike from being higher than the change in median household income. Neo-Democrat lawmaker Gary Fan said this cap doesn't fully reflect the situation. He said the formula must include the MTR Corporation's income from its property business. Under the fare adjustment mechanism, fares could either go up or down. It now includes a penalty clause for train service disruptions and a profit-sharing mechanism for fare concessions. A review of fare concessions for second journeys on the same day will take place in 2017 at the earliest. Rani Samtani, TVB News.
Turning overseas now, Thailand's military-appointed legislature has dealt a double blow to ousted Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra and her powerful family. Yingluck has been found guilty of negligence and banned from politics for 5 years. And as James Aiken reports, more serious legal troubles lie ahead for the country's first female leader.
The verdict was reached against Yingluck for her failure to exercise sufficient oversight of a subsidy scheme that paid farmers above market prices for rice. The program cost Thailand billions of dollars. The vote carries with it a 5-year ban from politics for Yingluck, who was removed from office for abuse of power last year, days before a military coup toppled the remnants of her government. The decision required support from 60% of the National Legislative Assembly members, nearly half of whom are former or serving military officers. The vote came after the Attorney General's office announced separate plans to indict Yingluck on criminal charges related to losses and alleged corruption in the rice scheme. Those charges could land Yingluck in jail for up to 10 years. She disputed the charges in an appearance at the NLA yesterday and argued the scheme boosted the economy. The legal cases are the latest chapter in 10 years of turbulent politics. The Shinawats have been pitted against the royalist military establishment, which sees them and their populist policies as a threat. Yingluck and her brother Thaksin, himself a former prime minister, remain popular among the rural poor. Supporters say the courts and lawmakers are aligned with an establishment intent on blocking the Shinawats from politics. Thailand, meanwhile, remains under martial law, and a government ban on public gatherings has kept the streets of the capital quiet. But security has been tightened around key government buildings, and the move to impeach Yingluck is likely to further stoke tension in the politically divided nation. James Aiken, TVB News.
The deadline to pay ransom for 2 Japanese hostages being held by Islamic State militants has passed, but there's no word on the fate of the men. The mother of one of the hostages, 47-year-old journalist Kenji Goto, has made an impassioned plea for her son's life. Junko Ishido appealed for understanding from the captors and urged the Japanese government to help him. Japan's chief cabinet secretary insisted Tokyo is doing all it can to secure their release. Yoshihide Suga declined to go into details of the ongoing diplomatic efforts. In a video message released on Tuesday, the militants threatened to kill the hostages in 72 hours unless they receive $200 million.
Saudi Arabia's new king is promising to continue the policies of his predecessors. King Salman bin Abdul Aziz Al Saud made the comments after his half-brother, King Abdullah, died earlier today at the age of 90. During a reign of nearly 2 decades, King Abdullah sought to modernize his kingdom. His incremental reforms included greater opportunities for women. Abdullah also maintained a close alliance with Washington despite frequent friction. As King Abdullah's designated successor, the 79-year-old Salman immediately took power in the oil-rich kingdom. US Vice President Joe Biden will lead an American delegation to Saudi Arabia in the coming days to pay respects to the royal family. And still ahead in the news tonight. Will quantitative easing boost Europe's economy? December pay for ATV staff delayed further. And Roger Federer crashes out of the Australian Open.
The Oscars on Pearl. Aren't you an endangered species?
Are you kidding me? We're warriors, right? So hardcore you don't feel anything.
Kung Fu Panda 2, Sunday, February 1st on Pearl's Movie of the Month.
Stay down.
The selection of the chief executive by universal suffrage in 2017 will be a milestone in Hong Kong's constitutional development.
According to Article 45 of the Basic Law, a broadly representative nominating committee will nominate candidates. Then all voters will elect the chief executive through one person, one vote. Finally, there is appointment by the Central People's Government.
Following these steps, we can all elect our chief executive in 2017.
Once again, I must ask too much of you.
Saturday.
This memory is everything.
Only he
You're the chosen one, Harry.
can unlock the secret
Doubtless we leave the fate of our world to chance.
that can save them all.
Fight back, you coward!
Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince on Pearl. The time now is 7:42. The time check was brought to you by Seiko.
Welcome back to TVB News. World financial markets have gained ground after the European Central Bank announced a major dose of stimulus for the Eurozone economy. The long-awaited bond-buying program is designed to make loans and exports cheaper so companies can hire and expand. Alan Buckner reports.
Beginning in March, the ECB will buy 60 billion euros worth of government and corporate bonds each month. ECB President Mario Draghi said the stimulus will be extended if the bank deems it's necessary.
They are intended to be carried out until end September 2016 and will in any case be conducted until we see a sustained adjustment in the path of inflation, which is consistent with our aim of achieving inflation rates below but close to 2% over the medium term.
Inflation in the Eurozone is well short of the goal, standing at just 0.2% in last year's third quarter. It reflects sluggish demand that can paralyze the economy. Analysts welcomed the move with some skepticism.
I think he's bought the Eurozone a little bit more time. But, you know, once again, we come back to that familiar refrain, and it's basically governments have to implement structural reforms. Ultimately, the answer to the Eurozone crisis doesn't lie in the hands of central bankers, it lies in the hands of politicians.
It is late. I wouldn't say too late.